Hey, Happy New Year, frequent flyers. Tommy Danielsen here, reporting from on January 1st from no other place than actually Hawaii. So my wife is eager to get out to the beach right now, so we're not going to make this into an hour philosophical debate, but we're here today chatting a little bit about the changes that British Airways have made to their programs. We're going to try and dive into the prediction of what happens next and how this can be complicated, what's good, what's bad, and what the future holds for those who are flying One World and British Airways. And today I have a couple of dear friends with me today. Mark Beattie and I have known each other since like 2004, 2005, when we were moderators on Flyer Talk, both of us. And I'm from Norway originally, so like some of you might know. And Mark is from the UK. He is one of BA's most frequent flyers. And Mark, did you get up to guest list lifetime?
Yes, I'm guest list. Yeah, I'm fine.
You're sitting pretty here right now, huh? So and also we have, as everybody knows who's watched the channel before, has seen David Feldman, who is our global chair of all of our Loyalty Summit conferences, and also our head of our thought leader gang that we lean to listen, one of the world's leading loyalty experts. So David is based in California. He's originally from Australia, but I don't think he is participating in the Qantas frequent flyer program.
Well, I'm lifetime goal with Qantas, so it's that's done and dusted.
There you go. All right, so Mark, did this come as a shock to you, or did when we saw the changes happening to the program with the earnings? Did we see that the next natural step was to take a peek at how you qualify for status?
Yeah, I think realistically this was inevitable. In my Flyer Talk predictions for 2024, I put it in as one of the ones I thought was coming. I didn't think it'd be this quickly. I didn't think it'd be with this short notice, nor launched on a Monday between Christmas and New Year. Those were all perhaps a surprise. But for me, yeah, I think it was inevitable. It was coming.
Right. So looking at the logic behind this and the situation, it looks to me like, if I were to paint a picture of what I see here, it looks quite similar to the earning structure, money-wise, that compared to the American programs. Maybe a little bit more difficult because it's in British pounds, and British pounds are, what are they now, 1.2627?
It could be anything today.
It could be anything for sure, but since the majority of our viewers and listeners are American, that's pretty much so. Meaning that if it's £20,000 to get gold, that's the equivalent to about 24 and 25, 26, $8,000 that you have to spend in order to maintain your gold status. Is pretty accurate. But the market, the UK market, is a little bit different. So the way that I see BA is that it is a one airport airline with a little bit of trickle to Gatwick, which is extremely dependent on, or 100% dependent on, that hub to do business out of. And surrounded in the London market, you have an airline that's bigger than BA. That's Ryanair, that flies out of Stansted, flies a bit out of Gatwick as well, and some other airports in the area that's a little bit further outside of London. So their hub kind of is surrounded by those going short haul. Will have some alternatives, and you also have EasyJet, you got Wizz Air, you got Norwegian, you got all sorts of competition that BA doesn't have. No, I mean that American and Delta and United and their Fortress hub doesn't have. David, what do you think? What kind of an impact do you think that will have on this change that we're seeing here?
Look, for those of our listeners and viewers that aren't UK based or BA members, it may be a little bit of a some context is probably necessary because they're probably very familiar with what happened with the US carriers, which was you had this old model, which was literally how many miles did you fly, and you got status based on hitting certain thresholds. BA didn't have that. BA had tier points, which for listeners in other parts of the world, very similar to Cathay Pacific's status credits or Qantas's status credits or Virgin Australia's status credits. Completely different system, which loosely translated to you got more status credits the further you flew and the higher class of service that you purchased. So first class would get more than business, which got more than premium economy, which got more than economy. And they were able to segment that even by regions. I mean, Qantas about 10 years ago introduced something they called simpler and fairer, which instead of having a simple status credit table, they had it by, well, here's our one for certain US routes or certain European routes or, internal domestic routes. And they were able to more fine tune how generous they were or weren't, depending if it was kind of short haul or medium haul or long haul or profitable routes or if there was competition on that route. It was a little convoluted and complicated, but it wasn't just that blunt instrument that the US carriers used to have was you flew a mile, you earned a mile towards status, and once you hit 100,000 miles, you got top status. It wasn't as simple as that. So the necessity for BA to change because they had too many people gaming the system and getting status on the cheap wasn't as critical as it was with US carriers. There was a better correlation to revenue earned from those flyers when they had status, again, compared to the old US model. Adopting the blunt instrument of just how much have you spent on flights, it's actually kind of what we would now call the medium hold US system because the US carriers have even moved on from that to what you sort of hinted a broader approach that takes into account credit card spend and things like that as well. From BA's perspective, there's a couple of things. Number one, there is a theory, there's the big bath theory. If you're going to make a change, you make a huge change all at once, you change the system, you increase the thresholds dramatically, everybody's going to be upset, and at some point it's going to settle down. There is some theory around do it all at once, rip the band aid off, if you will. They're going to be looking at a few things. Number one, they're going to be looking at their competitive market set, like what you've said. Now, their European competitors, generally speaking, have moved in this direction, rightly or wrongly, but starting with copying the US system, particularly the Delta model. Delta's ownership structure of a number of those carriers may have something to do with that. The other aspect they're going to be looking at is their current member base. Who's qualifying for status, the revenue that they're attributing towards those members, and they're going to have a desired member pool. How many people are silver? How many people are gold? How many people are gold guest list? That kind of thing. They're going to have an ideal range. One World also sort of has some guidelines for carriers in terms of kind of what that mix should be between status tiers, and depending on where they are with that in terms of total membership, for example, that can restrict them for things like status matching or being able to poach, from competitors with corporate offers and things like that. So there are a lot of back office issues sort of around status that play into this. They will have modeled their ideal size for each of their tiers. And they would have literally drawn a line and said, well, if we're going to move to revenue, what's that line? If we draw it here, we have X number of people here and we have Y number of people here, and we're happy with that pool. That's going to influence things like lounge crowding, upgrades, certificates, Concord room access, all those kind of things. Now, that's all easy to do in an Excel spreadsheet, and it's all easy to do in theory. In practice, what happens is you upset your entire member base. And you have very loosely, you have two types or maybe three types of flyers, very broadly. You have your managed corporate flyers. Think about your people that work for your PwCs of the world, your McKinseys. They're on contract. They don't have a choice whether they're flying VA or not, and they're not paying for their fares. At the other extreme, you have your once or twice a year leisure flyers. Perhaps retired, perhaps they're 18 years old, perhaps they're anywhere in the middle. And then you have what I'm going to call your self-funded business travelers, your small business people, or your people with real skin in the game where it's coming out of their pocket. Maybe they're getting reimbursed, maybe they're getting partially reimbursed, maybe they're not, maybe it's their own company. So they've got their eye on every dollar spent. And they've got full agency and choice in terms of who they fly, what fare they buy, what cabin they fly in, or even if they need to make the trip, or if they can have the business meeting on Zoom or Teams. So if you think about it, those rough groups, ignore the leisure flyers because BA is ignoring the leisure flyers. They're also the most fickle and the least brand adhesive or sticky. Your managed corporate travelers on the other end of the scale, I mean, they're the people you love. They're your bread and butter. But they don't have any agency in who they're flying. Certainly not from the status program, because they're managed by the corporate sales program, which, by the way, can award status, even regardless of status threshold. So, you know, if BA is doing a deal with the McKinseys of the world and they want to hand out a bunch of gold guest lists to important decision makers, they can do that regardless of what the public qualification levels for that status tier are. That's a sales issue. So the problem or the challenge that they have going forward is you're going to have a bunch of people qualifying for status for which status doesn't actually influence any purchase behavior because they're already locked in. And then you're going to have a huge bucket, that middle bucket of people that I mentioned, that actually do have agency in their purchase decisions that are now going to struggle to hit status tiers. They probably have been motivated by status and the carrot, dangling in front of them to consolidate their spend or their share of wallet on BA, or perhaps take discretionary trips or choose a trip to see a client instead of having the meeting on Zoom or Teams. For those people, if they're no longer going to make it, a percentage of them are going to just say, you know what, forget it. I'm not interested in playing this game anymore. I am going to, if I have to fly, I'll fly whoever I want to fly on the day, best fare of day, whatever, because if status is no longer locking me in, I'm a free agent. That's revenue loss to BA. So BA's challenge is going to be how many people for whom status was an incentive are now going to be disenfranchised versus how many people are going to be happy as a clam, but status has never been an incentive for them anyway, so behavior isn't going to change. In time, they'll do the analytics and they'll have a look, and you may see promotions and winbacks and targeted offers. If that balance is wrong, they may fine tune. In the meantime, though, it's a huge gamble for BA. And, my crystal ball's as good as yours, but there's a lot of very smart people working in the offices there. Their modeling is good. They have made very deliberate decisions. You can also make the assumption, and this isn't any inside information, but I can certainly tell you this pattern repeats at every carrier that I've ever worked with. There will have been tension between the loyalty team and other corporate teams. Finance is obviously a big one, but sales and others and all the rest. And there will have been some conflict between them because the loyalty team may perhaps have wanted to be more generous or have easier to achieve thresholds or, not lose as many existing flyers, that kind of thing. There's going to be some internal tensions, and this is the compromise that got reached, or perhaps the C-suite overrode the loyalty team, as we saw what happened with the Advantage team a few years back. Time will tell what the result will be, but my takeaway on this is if I was BA's advisor, I would not have advised them to do this. Certainly not to the scale that they've ripped the band off.
Yeah, I mean, also their technology doesn't support. It's the by far the worst tech in any sort of frequent flyer program or even hotel program there is. That's
tech is always a constraint on what you can do.
Right. I think that their tech is not working for just simple things as of today. So it'll be interesting to follow. Mark, after listening to David, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's right. I think there's going to be a number of people who are going to actually go somewhere else simply because it's actually more convenient if that someone else flies from their local airport. I mean, BA often nicknamed the London airline because although it does have some feeder routes, it doesn't cover what the European competitors cover in terms of feeder routes. I mean, if you look at KLM, they're flying from an enormous number of airports in the UK now, and if you were going to get a cheap flight from Dublin for BA, then you might as well get that for Ryanair or EasyJet or any of those. I think we're going to see this come about very slowly because people have got status running through a period of time. I suspect that the survey group they asked were the full-fare corporate flyers who said the lounges are too busy, I can't get a seat. And that's where they've come to it from. But I think there's going to be challenges, and I think it's interesting that this sort of change is making the front page of the British national newspapers. Anything BA ever does always makes the headlines, which I think is about a country that's quite invested in its flag carrier. I do think the change is very steep and very quick. It might have been better to have done something now and done something in 3 years, but they've clearly done their numbers.
Yeah, the shitstorm has been exceptional. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, to be honest with you. The reactions have been dramatic, but I wanted to kind of highlight one example here. So everybody's talking about gold, and everybody's talking that we need to get the lounges to have less access. We need to have blah blah blah, whatever. It's too full or whatnot. And what we've seen in the U.S. is that none of the changes that have been made to the U.S. programs had any impact in how full it is. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if we look down in the tiers and we see that it's £7,500 to get silver. Well, silver gets you into the lounge, and I think that a lot of the gold customers are going to be at that level, and that lounge upstairs is pretty, skimpy compared to and also is full already. So there's no room to kind of move to. There are more of those lounges, obviously, at the opposite end of, and also in the other concourses at Heathrow. But I wanted to focus a little bit about the lowest tier, the bronze level, which required only a few flights really to kind of get to that level, and it has the incentive for semi-frequent flyers, those who take a couple of trips a year to the Canary Islands or to the Riviera or something like that, maybe one or two business trips, so they're casual flyers. But it has enough incentive with check bags and priority security, and it has the incentive for choosing seats closer in and things like that, which saves money. And it also has the incentive for BA to sell a higher fare to these guys, because they want to get off the lowest and light. No, it's not called light. Is it called light? It's called something else, like the basic or whatever at the bottom. So it has an incentive for them to be higher spenders already. They get more revenue out of them. I did a little bit of work with SAS back in the day when they had a principle to compete with Norwegian. They put up a principle that you had to take 5 flights with them per year. Then you would get silver. And silver would get no lounge access, but would get all of the other things that I mentioned here, everything except for lounge access, right? You got to board in the beginning, you got to back then, now it's boarding group 2, so after gold, but still, it's still a priority boarding, it's a priority whatever, all of those things that you've had in advance. And 5 flights is attainable, and they made it like that so that the occasional flyers would give some benefits that didn't kind of have any, and it didn't have any big impact on the road warriors, because they were not in the lounge, they didn't get to board first, and the security at airports is pretty robust and can handle whatever. They sell it themselves. All the airports in Europe, you can purchase priority security, right? So it's or most airports you can do that. So that to me is kind of what I think is the joker here. At £3,500, that's not 5 flights a year, and most definitely not 5 flights a year. And I wonder how big of an impact that will have on the category that you talked about, David, that are the occasional ones, because in my mind, what I'm thinking, if I was that flyer, I would say nonstop is always important. Frequency is always important, meaning that, and if you look at the market, like Melinda and I were flying to Milan after our retail media summit in London mid-November. On that Thursday, when you guys went home on Friday, we went to Milan to wait a few days to head home or to hang out for the weekend. And we had 12 options in the afternoon, evening, one of which was BA, one flight. And it was that we would probably have made it, but the threshold was so low for us for who we choose. Even if I have BA Silver, we both have BA Silver. Even the threshold was so low for us that, it leaves at 8, but there is a Wizz Air flight that leaves at 8:50 from Gatwick, which means that where we were in London played a big factor of it, and also it played a big factor of it that we didn't have to rush to that flight. The Heathrow flight would have been a stretch, even if it would have been probably it's about the same. I mean, if you get the Heathrow Express, not Gatwick Express, that other train that goes out there to Gatwick, and it takes half an hour, so it's not really that much of a difference when you calculate in. So that was my threshold for that. Right, and I had silver status with them, meaning I could have gone to. I wouldn't have time to do it, but and then I paid £6 to get priority security. That's how it adds up a lot of stuff until you head up to £3,500.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so David, I honestly think that those flyers are also to be. They are focusing on when the flights leave during the day. You don't want to leave at 6 a.m. If you don't want to go super late, if you don't want to, do in a rush hour or whatever that is, or you have to be at work until set hour or whatever, that's probably the number one in addition to price, right? How do we feel about that?
Yeah, look, I think you've hit on something, and that is when you do look at the thresholds, they're not all ridiculous. Even just your first 20-second glance at the new program, certainly gold, you're looking at it, it's like, whoa, but you're looking at the lower levels, you're like, not obscene, it's not unreasonable at all. I mean, even if you're not comparing to what it is today compared to what it is tomorrow. And I think if you look at that, you'll see very clearly what BA's deliberate strategy is. And that is they're not saying that status should be off limits to everybody except top spenders. What they're saying is that the best benefit should be off limits except to the top spenders. Um, you know, and the reality is in many programs, what we would call outside of BA the gold level, your mid tier, typically is a sweet spot in many programs. You get some priority access and security and bags and lounge access and things. For most people, that really is the sweet spot of status. It removes the bulk of the friction that occurs when you travel. And I think that you'll find that their attitude is for the people that are in my bucket that I sort of talked about self-selecting, maybe small business people. Many of those people are actually kind of happy with that status level as a general rule. So if it's a choice between can I consolidate my spend on BA and achieve that status level, have some lounge access and things like that, but maybe I'm no longer getting that next level up, that might be okay. And I think you'll find that that's part of the strategy. And again, I go back to my word earlier, the gamble that the BA is putting. At the same time, there are still going to be some people that are just like, you know what, no, this is all too hard. You know what, I'm spending more money than I need to be spending compared to if I was just a free agent and perhaps buying up to a premium class of service or adding in lounge access a la carte. And this is where the danger is to BA because we're no longer in the world that we were in 10, 15 years ago. Nowadays, you can add large access on for $50 or €50 or £50, whatever it is, to a flight. You can buy priority boarding. You can buy extra bags ahead of time if you really need to check bags. Business people don't tend to check bags. So those friction points that traditionally you had to have demonstrated your loyalty via status to earn, things like priority access, things like lounge access, can kind of be bought ad hoc or a la carte now. And what this change is going to do is force a lot of people to actually sit down, and some people have Excel spreadsheets and as old fly talk moderators, you know the type of people I'm talking about. And you guys probably had spreadsheets back in the day too. But the reality is that some people have spreadsheets. And if nothing else, for business people, they have a line in their QuickBooks that says how much they spent on travel. They know that number. Their accountant knows that number. And they're going to be looking at it and going, you know what? Yes, I could achieve that first level of status and that medium level of status and give me lounge access and things. Or I could just be a free agent, pay for things when I need to, fly whoever I need to, maybe have the same level of comfort and still save money. That's the risk for VA. Is that this is going to force a lot of people to do the maths and to actually think about how much am I really spending and do I need to, am I spending more than I need to be spending playing this game? That's the risk.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what the strategy I've had since 2016. I've kind of changed my view, and I also have to see what I get in return. I typically don't go and get hammered in the lounge anymore like I used to back in the day, and I try to, my philosophy later in life as I've turned 50 and stuff is, I honestly, my priority is to get to the airport late, spend as little time as there as possible, and get to my destination as fast as I can, as comfortable as I can. And when I shop, and I could have been BA Gold, 2 times over if I wanted to, but I've decided that I don't pursue status anymore. And if something falls in my lap at the end of the year, it's like, for example, I was able to get Flight Blue status out of nowhere this year, which I didn't aim for at all, because of some flights we took. I just buy whatever cheapest in the premium cabin traveling from Europe to, I buy reversed from Europe to the US because prices are just better that way. But still, at the end of the day, that's kind of my strategy when it comes to short haul in Europe. And I just looked it up. Mark, do you know what the number is? How many of BA's passengers are long haul?
No, I don't. I'm afraid.
So I have something outdated. It's from I Google it from 20. Actually, it's 2023. So if between 50 and 60% are long haul passengers, and that's probably going to be the saving grace for BA, because that's since it's such a high percentage of their compared to many other airlines, long haul that their percentage of long haul passengers is so high, it's they really don't have any competition other than Virgin, and I would say that the return of investment you get from Virgin and their system and stuff is, but we've also noticed that Virgin has lowered their fuel surcharges or as carrier imposed fees lately, haven't they? They're a little bit lower now.
They've been playing games with their new scheme, basically being the number of points you need is dependent on what the fare would be. So if you can book a long way out and it's a lower fare, then it's cheaper. And their surcharges do seem to be a few £100s cheaper, but it's quite hard to tell within that complex equation for them. A short in advance flight with Virgin is hundreds of thousands of points now. I think the other thing to remember is that for many leisure travellers, if they book an economy seat Euro traveller with BA, they get a pretty cheap offer to upgrade to club very often. And for that, then that can actually satisfy a number of the things that they've lost with tier points. Never rely on it, but actually it's sometimes quite a good way of getting extra bags, security, the meal in the cabin, earlier boarding.
Well, you also get lounge access.
and you get lounge access.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. And I can tell you a couple of data points. We went to Berlin in November, and it was €89. No, 89 euros to upgrade. Going back to, we had club going there, but we upgraded for 89 euros to get those benefits. And again, how many of those do you need to purchase to get up to 7,500 pounds for silver? That's a big jump. But that's ancillary that's already available, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. It's not new. There's nothing new coming to that, except that I think if you're making a value equation, you might very well say, well, I'll just pick those up when it's a special event, birthday, anniversary, and, or I'll pay it if the company's only paying economy. I mean, you see a number of those now where people are saying, look, I'll pay the 90 quid because I just want to be able to get my bag in the overhead bin.
Right. But the motivation has changed. The only reason why I bought it was because of the tier points, that extra tier points that I got, right? For 89 bucks or 89 euro, well, euro and dollars are about the same now. For that little money, I would get 40 tier points instead of 5, which is
Well,
for me, if I were to work my way up to 600 and I were close, which was the case in this case here, that would be a cheap way. But now the motivation is, okay, so I lost silver. Now I get all the benefits of silver by only giving them $89 for the 8 flights a year I take on short haul, which is different. And
I think there's also some other eccentricities that will appear. So if I was having a look today, if you go from LA to JFK with American versus going with Alaska, the number of tier points you end up is really very substantially different. I think it's about sort of 700 if you do the American route, and even routing through Seattle with Alaska, it's about 400. So people are going to have to be quite careful if they are chasing status, what they are actually looking at.
Well, now it won't matter because they can just fly nonstop.
Well, that's absolutely right. But if you're trying to, US-based flyers trying to supplement it, bearing in mind they haven't got the credit card as far as we can see, may well be looking at squeezing out every single tier point if they're chasing status.
I think you're going to see a lot less of the. I mean, for me, I don't fly American enough that the flagship thing does anything for me with silver. So for me, that's kind of, I honestly don't care. But I would say in general, for American flyers, I think the Alaska route is a much better route to go, and just purchase the club access for domestic for Alaska and American regardless. I think that's probably, I don't think you're going to see any value. Is there any value for American flyers now to even chase the BA status to get into the lounges for free on domestic?
I'm not sure, frankly. If you can buy it, or if you have a credit card, a US credit card that gets you into American, I think it's questionable.
What do you think, David? Are we going to see any of the American flyers? Is there any value for them to credit to BA instead of American now, or Alaska?
Look, as you well know, the number of people that played that game and did that is, it's minuscule. In the grand scheme of things. On Fly Talk, obviously it's a little bit more than minuscule, but in the big picture, it's minuscule.
Right.
Look, there's going to be some people for which it still works. For people who have business going to the UK, a couple of times a year, for example, the people that used to do that to meet the squiggle requirement anyway, that's not going to change. If they need to be going to London for business a couple of times a year, or for family or whatever else, that's not going to change. Whether they see value in continuing to maintain the relationship with the program, domestic US lounge access is going to be part of the calculus that individual is going to make. For those that play the game, or particularly savvy, I think they will look to say, well, that approach doesn't just work with BA; it's any offshore, one world carrier. They're going to do the calculations and see if a different one world carrier makes more sense. Others, again with the commoditization of lounge access in the US, the reality is some of them are going to say, well, can I just buy a lounge access a different way? Perhaps it's via holding a co-brand card, or perhaps it's a non-airline lounge that they're going to look to access. And others are also going to say, well, in the US, you know what? Again, it's a different situation of 15 years ago where the terminal was a little clinical, and relaxation options were a little dire. I don't know about you, but you mentioned nowadays you get as late as possible. My attitude is the same. I am not upset if I get to the airport and I don't go anywhere near the lounge. I mean, to me, if I get to the airport, I clear security, I have time to, attend to some business. Perhaps if I need to pick something up at the shop or at the store to take on the plane or something like that. I have time to do that. Hopefully, I'm not stressing in case security takes a little bit longer. But then, like honestly, if I'm going to the gate and boarding is starting within 10 or 15 minutes, perfect. I'm very happy. Um, Lounges are good in case of disruption. Lounges are good where you have a long layover, where you don't have a choice, but you have to pick the airport earlier. But there's very few lounges that are worth going to the airport hours in advance for deliberately. And even for those that are, for most flyers, the novelty of that wears off, by the second or third visit pretty quickly. But every individual calculation is going to be different. But I think the point I'm trying to make there, Tommy, is I think the value of having domestic lounge access in the US isn't what it used to be. The quality of the lounge.
No,
lounges can
you
be
also have
ordinary.
Chase lounges, you have American Express lounges, you have Capital One lounges, you have Priority Pass, you have tons of various lounges that are competing with the carriers, right? So it's not
Yes.
just that. So
Yes.
so the
Yeah,
picture has definitely
yeah,
changed domestically, and we're also seeing that the good lounges are if only for the ones who are traveling in business class or higher, right? So if you want to get into Polaris, you got to be in business class. You can't use that as a status customer, meaning it's another proof that status isn't what it used to be. It wasn't like the highest level of, as you can see in Germany, the first class terminal, you get access as an on-circle member, but you don't get access to through in the U.S. if you are. I guess you get access. Well, on international flight, if you're global services, you might get access. I don't remember, but
I think we do.
yeah, and then the Delta One lounges that are now starting to pop up all over the country also are requiring you to be in business class, and also they have at LAX at least, and also in Boston I saw, you will not get in if you are in business class and you have to be in, if you're business class on KLM, Air France, or SAS, or whoever the base. So we're talking about SAS and SkyTeam, but here we are. They won't get access either, even if so if you're flying SAS business class out of LAX or Air France business class out of LAX, the only one who gets in to the Delta One lounge is if you're in La Premiere. So that also is starting to restrict people of what you're paying for the cabin that you're in are paying for. So it's funny that you might have the diamond status, but you won't get in with that. So it definitely changes a lot of changes here. But you think that so the conclusion here is that David thinks that they tore the ban off really quick. Do you think that they'll walk this back? Any of it?
I think no. I think you'll find some maybe minor adjustments, but you would have minor adjustments in any case going forward. I think what you may see is some targeted promotions, win back offers, things like that for certain segments of former status members that are no longer on track to qualify or no longer qualify or display switching behavior away from the airline. I think you'll find that BA will be watching them and making a decision about whether to target some of those segments with some special offers. I wouldn't expect much outside of that. I think that they're going to expect this to blow over, and it'll be business as usual.
What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, no, I agree. The reduced number of Avios earnings blew over fairly quickly. And yes, it made the papers, but BA make the papers every week. They will target, I'm sure they will, if they think they're falling short in particular categories. But they've gone so hard so fast, and I don't see how they can possibly walk it back without it looking absolutely absurd. And I don't think they have any incentive to do that at the moment, because they've got to test it and see whether what they wanted, whatever that was, is actually going to be delivered by this.
Well, it's not unprecedented. We saw Delta doing, Delta walk back. They lowered the number significantly from, was it 35,000 to 28,000 the spending requirement for Diamond was? That was, I did not expect that, because I was out of arrogance level. I think BA is here, but I think Delta is right under them, right? So they don't care. That's the way usually Delta behaves when they come out with something. So for sure, but I don't think they'll walk it back either. And there's going to be promos, but I think that at the end of the day, it's you'll. I think that they are not as immune because they don't have a backup plan for and the technology to do something like American did, and had made opened the door for I mean getting One World Emerald, and as Gary pointed out yesterday, the sweet spot now is Platinum Pro with which gives you Emerald also with American Airlines. Upgrades are not while Lounge Access is the main motivator for BA. Upgrades are the main motivator, or complimentary domestic upgrades has been the main motivator for American Airlines. But you kind of don't get those anymore. It's because they're for sale, and also it's the same thing. Last trip I took on American Airlines, I was going to Dallas, and I bought a ticket for like $100 from Sacramento nonstop. And as soon as I purchased it, because I only have gold with them, right? So right after I purchased the ticket, I got an offer for $149, so $249 in first class, and I was like, I'll take that. And guess what? Got to the gate, and there was like 30 people on the list for a 737. It's so that's not worth it either. That's obviously changing. So the motivation for that is different. But getting American Airlines Executive Platinum requires you to spend 18 grand, which is an attainable number. But if you are, want to clip coupons or whatever we want to call what they're doing now, that's the hacking industry now, right? That's all the American Airlines doing things that I definitely don't want to do for airline status. Buying hotel stuff, doing rent-a-cars, changing electricity carriers, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. But it's a little bit different because I think that the customers are a little bit different, and BA's customers are definitely different. I think that also, to me, BA is a shadow of its former self. They don't have the thing that I would love to stop in Heathrow. If the times I fly out of London per year, as that's where I origin, is the two conferences we have there, right? And if I were to say, if I was sitting there flying from Europe and saying, I'm going to do a stop at Heathrow, the last remaining airport in Europe where you have to go through security when you do a connection, should I do that because BA is so cream of the crop, marzipan cake with a light on top, awesome, to do that? And I would say no. The catering is kind of a little bit bumpy. The operational stuff is they're always late, and it's Heathrow. To me, that's like, there are a lot of negatives here. It's not a carrier I would want to go out of my way to fly. So that's kind of my subjective opinion, but I think that a lot of UK guys, you're going to sit on a plane for an hour and 25 minutes to get to Nice, or an hour and 45 to get to Milan. Who cares who you fly? Because you can even fly to some of these carriers now. You can buy the middle seat open on low cost carriers, right? So that's they're now starting to look at ancillary like that, and that to me feels like they're tooling around with the 40 to 50% of their customer base. I think is going to have more impact than the long haul stuff. I think long haul is going to be safe, but I saw Gibbs' article where he said, well, now that they're doing this, they can start spending money. They will start spending money on premium products, and they are going to get back to their greatness again now that they have money to spend. Well, I think that the cost difference between the lounge downstairs and the lounge upstairs is that bottle of Johnny Blue that's not there anymore. so it really isn't. The cost is the same, right, for those who become silver. So I honestly don't think that's the reasoning behind it. Why are they doing it? Because they can, and they're going to try and milk the customers for what they're worth. And I think that that's great. It's their business. How it all lands, it'll be interesting to see. But from my conclusion is it's they're happy days over at EasyJet and Ryanair and Norwegian this week for sure, because they're going to see a little, even if it's just a little bump, they're definitely going to see a bump in where they're winning anyways. If there are 12 flights to Milan out of London and only one is on BA, what does that tell you? All right. Anything else we want to add to this?
The only thing I'd say, you mentioned upgrades. I think the thing that none of the bloggers have covered really is the increase in the gold upgrade vouchers. So you used to get one of those, you got 2,500 or 3,500 tier points. That's 35,000 new tier points or 50,000 new tier points, which is a massive increase. So those upgrades that people have been using with their Amex companion vouchers to get into club and to first, I think that's going to be gone.
Wow, that's a crazy amount of money. Wow, that's you're right. I read about it, but I didn't pay attention to that because there were so many other things to do. David, do you want to wrap it up?
No, I just think that, I think this motivation to be made. You open the call by saying, look, the reaction to this is incredible. Not necessarily in a positive way, but it is. It's huge. I mean, that probably is, in proportion to the fact that this is a massive change. And this change for everybody who is UK based, especially that is invested in the BA program that has been for a long time, this pulls the rug out front of them. For some people, they're okay, they're fine. For some people, they're going to like the change, and for a lot, they're not. But for everybody, it's a massive change. And we know it's human nature. Nobody likes change. So I think the dust will settle. I think it's a huge gamble on BA's part. There will be some attrition. They will have calculated a lot of that in. They'll be watching very closely to see whether that matches their model, whether they're happy with the results. I think that part. I think there is a miscalculation built in there, and I think it's not just BA. We've seen it across the industry, and that is that carriers have underestimated historically the importance of status for locking in and consolidating share of wallet from existing customers. And I think that across the industry, we have seen carriers not take as much care as they should to retain the relationship with those existing customers. I mean, think about personal relationships. Once you breach trust with anybody with personal relationships, it's very hard to win it back. And when people basically say, I'm done, I'm out the door, hey, they may still pick up the phone, they may still show up to a social event occasionally, but that friendship is done, that relationship is done. And it's never going to be what it was in the past. BA is going to have that with a lot of people, with a lot of existing customers, the same as every carrier who's gone before them has suffered from that. Is it going to change their bottom line or upset their bottom line too much in the end? There's a lot of Excel modeling behind it, and they'll be watching to see if they track it or not.
All right. Sounds good. We shall all see. Thank you, gentlemen, for both of you for taking time to join me today. Enjoy your New Year's Day, and we'll talk soon. Giddy up.
Bye.